Get ready for some Zoomer on Zoomer action, I guess. But today I'm going to be kind of like debunking slash responding to a video by Adam Mockler, who is an upcoming political commentator and I guess kind of like Democrat establishment aligned activist. He's been popping up in my YouTube recommended a lot more because he's been going to a lot of Trump rallies and kind of like debunking a lot of MAGA people and stuff, which I think is honestly really good work and stuff. But this video that he just published about this is why Trump will lose in 2024 is just insane cope, and he doesn't even address really inflation, which is a huge issue in a lot of Americans' minds, is why a lot of minority groups are moving towards Donald Trump. It's like small numbers, it's like 4 or 5%, but that's still like that can make or break the election when we need every vote that we can get. And then also additionally, he doesn't even touch on what's occurring in Gaza, that President Biden is literally facilitating and abetting an ethnic cleansing campaign being committed by a Zionist rogue Israeli state. Like, he doesn't even address that. I think he has one part in the video where he goes, oh, no one cares about foreign policy. And that is all he says. He doesn't even mention Israel. He doesn't mention anything, which is kind of insane because this is the issue that a lot of people think is going to make or break the election due to a lot of Arab communities in some of the swing states like Wisconsin, Minnesota, and stuff like that. But also the youth vote. The youth vote is not going to show out for Biden if he continues to do this. So anyways, let's start the video and we'll start the response.
The 2024 election may not be the slam dunk that we all thought it was going to be about a year ago. The election is now roughly 5 months out, and people are becoming increasingly worried that President Biden may not be able to beat Donald Trump as easily as he did in 2020.
You think Joe Biden beat Trump easily in 2020? The election was unironically decided by like 100 to like 200,000 votes across all the swing states. So basically in every single swing state, it was basically determined by a couple tens of thousands of votes. That's not an easy win. That's like a nail-biter election. That's like 1% of the population of the United States votes differently, and we're under the Trump regime still. Like, what is this framing? This is why I said he's a Democrat establishment type aligned type person, because like it's insane cope just to begin with. They frame everything like, oh, the Democrats are so strong and stuff. Like, the Democrats would be strong if they actually gave into the progressive wing of the Democrats. If they showed up for labor, if they showed up for Medicare for all, if they showed up for supporting Palestine and supporting the United States de-escalating and becoming a more ethical and peaceful superpower. Like, instead, what they do is they just obfuscate. And then when it comes to issues of, abetting genocide and shit, they just don't even talk about it, like this guy.
This growing concern is due to polling not really changing even as Donald Trump goes through a criminal trial, even as President Biden gives these amazing speeches at college campuses or even at the State of the Union.
The Donald Trump stuff isn't changing because his supporters are a cult. They are just going to follow him no matter what. I really think the only thing that's going to affect his poll numbers with his criminal trials is if there's an actual conviction, which his trials are one of his trials is winding down, and there might be a conviction literally like within the next couple weeks or a month or so. And that could change the political landscape for Biden, but we can't count on that for Biden. And then you're saying, oh, Biden's giving good speeches. He gave one good speech. He gave a good State of the Union speech, and every single person and every political commentator on earth basically accused him of being on uppers and shit. Recently, he gave a speech at a college campus, which you're apparently saying was a good speech, but I don't think it's a good speech if the student who comes up right after you gives a speech basically condemning you and calling you out for facilitating an ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people in Gaza. By the way, if you want to support the Palestinian people, I put links in the description to aid organizations that you can donate to. I've donated a few times to it, and I really encourage, if you have the means, to do so, because it is a humanitarian disaster. Also, my kitty is meowing because he wants treats. So next segment.
But there are a few reasons we should remain optimistic heading into November, and I want to go over those today.
Okay, we can't wait to hear them.
What does Biden have going for him in November? And this was written by a concerned Biden supporter. One of the top replies says, "There's a lot of reasons to think the fundamentals favor Biden and why to not focus on the noise of the polls. I think the election is a toss-up, but I genuinely think Biden will win. Here's my thinking. Let's start with the fact that presidential polling is not and never has been predictive this far away from the election. At this point in 1980, Carter was ahead of Reagan. At this point in 1992, Clinton was at 29%. At this point in 2004, Kerry led Bush by 5%. Even in 2012, Obama was losing to Mitt Romney until the very last few months of the election. People will come back and say, but people know both these candidates already, so that argument doesn't work. And I'll say, people knew Trump and Hillary in 2016 too, and the polling was messed up then as well."
I can see that polling is not always fully accurate. It's been inaccurate, especially for Donald Trump. It was inaccurate for Biden at some points, but we haven't seen modern polling be off by like 10 to like 12% in some of these swing states, like in decades. And so this would be a huge error in how people are calculating, how people are doing polling. Though I do agree that it is too far away from the election to actually determine. There's still like about 6-ish months before people are voting. And so there's still a decent amount of time for polling to change and for Biden to actually like retake a lead or whatever. But that doesn't mean that it's going to happen. If things continue to trend as they are, which is the main reason why so many Democrats are waving a red flag, like warning everyone, is because currently, if we stay on this trajectory, he will lose.
His second reason is horse race presidential polling averages are misleading. Not all polls are created equal, so lumping them together like that creates an inaccurate picture. I don't really think Nate Silver and the 538 people are all that great at their jobs when they have to publish a piece justifying their 2022 polling when it was clearly misleading. Remember, in 2022, we were expecting a massive red wave, but that never came. In fact, Democrats blew Republicans out of the water in most competitive races.
Listen, I have problems with Nate Silver as much as the next gal, but honestly, he's been genuinely improving polling methods and the way that 538 actually works, especially after Donald Trump's 2016 win and in the 2020 election when people were really, I guess, doubting Biden. And I feel like the polling methodology has gotten better. I do still think there is still some variability, and I think a large quantity of why 2022's polling was so off was because of abortion. We just didn't know that there was going to be this much defection from Republicans, registered Republican women who voted a lot of times for pro-abortion and for Democrats for the first time in maybe even their entire lives because of this one issue. This one issue has completely reshaped the political landscape, and it could actually lead to Biden winning in 2024. It's one of his, I guess, strongest issues that he doesn't even have to try for because the Republicans are so bad on this issue.
Number 3 is people will say Biden is doing poorly because of a bad economy, but what's bad economy? According to polling, most folks seem to feel good or fine about their private situation. He points to a recent poll showing Americans are actually pretty happy with their finances. Americans overall have a surprising degree of satisfaction with their economic situation, according to findings from the Axios Vibe survey by the Harris poll. By the numbers, 63% of Americans rate their current financial situation as being good, including 19% of us who say it's very good, and neither number is particularly low. They're both entirely in line with the average result the past 20 times Harris poll has asked this question. So despite people saying the economy is tanking or there's a recession, most Americans are actually incredibly happy with how their personal financial situation is going.
I find this argument very, very ironic coming from a Zoomer, especially when most people who are going to say the economy sucks right now are the Zoomers and millennials, because we're the ones with the least amount of wealth, with the least amount of ability to buy a house with the least amount of wage increases, with the least amount of opportunity and everything. And we've just been set back by COVID, by recessions, by everything. And sure, maybe if you ask like a bunch of boomers and like Gen Xers, people who actually like respond to these type of like economic surveys and shit, how the economy's doing, they're gonna say that they feel personally more well off. But that's not the case for a large quantity of Americans, and especially more impoverished Americans. Even if it's just 30% of Americans who do feel like the economy is getting worse or whatever, that's still 30% of Americans. That's not 30% of, Republicans or Democrats or whatever. That's 30% of Americans, which means that there's going to be overlap of Democrat voters, especially when Democrat voters tend to be more low income, because we have a large quantity of people of color, but also people in poverty and stuff who came to the Democratic Party during the FDR era, and also from like the Biden tax credits and stuff, because the Democratic Party has institutionally always been a little bit better than the Republicans when it comes to economics for the lower classes, but they haven't ever been like great on it. And I think that's a big reason why, even though the economy may look good, like stocks and stuff, it just isn't resonating with the American people, because when they go to the grocery store, the prices are still absurd. And that's what they see every day when they go and they buy their food. It doesn't matter if the stock market's doing great if the vast majority of Americans don't even have stocks.
The person on the political thread then points out wage growth has consistently outpaced overall CPI. And that is perfect. That is exactly what we need. That means real wage growth is outpacing the growth of inflation in America, and people's paychecks are not only keeping up with inflation, but they are beating inflation.
Guys, I found the article he's referencing. It's from February 5th. That's crazy. It's from 3 months ago. Guys, look. So it looks like it's getting better, right, in February. But guess what's crazy? It starts going back up. Uh-oh, March. And we don't have the calculated data for April or May yet. Uh-oh, so we don't really know what's going on. And it's just kind of speculation. If you're saying that, if you're using data from literally like 4 months ago. But also additionally, let's move my camera for a second. Do you notice how this big inflation mark jumps from 2020 to about midway of 2022, right? So prices like jumped up by a huge percentage during that period. And you know what's crazy? Is there's no period of time here where consumer prices decreased, like went negative, which means that those prices stayed at that high amount, and that even though the rate of inflation went down, those prices are still rising at 3.4%. So basically they took the prices, they took them from like $2, right? Now they're about like $3. And instead of bringing it back to, $2 as it was before, or just like $2.50 or something, no, it's still at $3. But now inflation's just making it like $3.25 or something. So overall, consumers still feel like inflation is a huge issue because the prices are still really high, even if the wages are out competing inflation right now. Like, I just don't understand what it is with like establishment figures and misrepresenting data, but it's kind of awesome, and I think it's epic.
And listen, inflation sucks for everybody. Nobody likes seeing things get more expensive when they go to the grocery store, but as long as wage growth is outpacing the growth of inflation, that means Bidenomics is working, the Biden administration is winning and helping American citizens.
It's just Spin City, guys. I'm glad to hear that he doesn't like inflation. I think most people don't. I think there's a healthy rate of inflation. I think most economists do agree that if wages increase at the same rate of inflation, then there's no issue. But the big problem occurs if the inflation occurs at a really high rate for a significant period of time, like 2 to 3 months or something, or maybe like a year and a half. And so prices just skyrocket, right? But wages during that period, they didn't go up like at that dramatic rate. They just stayed the same. Oh, but then inflation went back down, so now it's like, parallel with it. Well, here's the issue. The fucking prices are still too high.
The person continues, I'm not going to sit here and pretend a lot of people aren't struggling with the initial price increases when 9% inflation first hit. That's what I was just saying. But the recovery has been ample and undeniable, and most people are doing relatively fine. Everyone who wants a job has one. Frankly, we aren't in a recession and aren't going to be given how strong the current quarter has been. I don't think nostalgia for lower prices and bad vibes are enough to move an election. They never have before. Only real recessions decide elections.
Just because we're back at like a, parallel rate of inflation with wage growth does not mean that there has been major damage done to the economy. Just because we're not in a recession doesn't mean that there hasn't been major damage to a lot of Americans' lives, especially the most impoverished and the most vulnerable people in our societies have been really hurt by this and have really felt betrayed by the Biden administration that basically promised a better future coming out of COVID and promised to actually care about the little guy. That was a huge motivator for a lot of people to vote for Biden in 2020, and to just totally skip over that is kind of insane. I don't think it will 100% definitively decide the election unless we do slip into a recession or a depression, which I hope we don't. But that doesn't mean that it won't have some form of impact, even if it's 5% or 1% of the electorate who decides to vote on this issue. That's still a percentage that we need to win. And every vote is going to matter in this election, especially when Biden is currently down in the polls to a fascist maniac.
The next reason he gives are people will say the wars and global chaos move the needle to Trump. America is not at war. We are not sending men to die. Those problems are oceans away and do not affect us. These wars, like all wars America isn't a belligerent in, will not affect the election. To build on that point, when you poll Americans about what they're worried about in this upcoming election, foreign policy tends to be the last on that list. It's very easy on social media when we see the extremes being boosted to the front page to think that all Americans think that Joe Biden is a warmongering president, but that's not the case. Most Americans aren't paying attention to our foreign affairs.
Guys, the only people who actually care about Palestine are all these Twitter leftists online who are just complaining about it all day. Totally not like it's a real thing or an issue that American voters care about or anything in any key swing states. Oh wait, Wisconsin, a key swing state in which Joe Biden only won the state by 20,000 votes. Guess what's crazy? 47,000 registered Democrats said they were voting uncommitted in that state, which means 47,000 Democrats in a basically uncontested primary election came out in winter to tell Joe Biden, we do not support your policies. We do not support you as a candidate. We do not support you as the presidential nominee for our party. Even if half of these people do not vote for Biden in this election cycle, the state could flip to Trump, and Trump wins the election. We are on the narrowest of narrowest margins. And even though you may think the majority of Americans don't support Palestine, because that may be true, the Americans who do support Palestine and are on the right side of history live in all the swing states. Arab Americans live throughout the Midwest, the upper Midwest, the North. I don't really know if that's the Midwest. That might be the North Midwest or whatever. But Minnesota and Wisconsin and Michigan and all these places, right, have very large Arab American communities. And guess what's crazy? Is they don't really appreciate Joe Biden sending billions of dollars to Israel so that they can bomb their cousins or people that they know or people who share the same religion, or that they just empathize more because guess what? They have a similar life background and life story. It's crazy that it's easier to put your shoes put yourself in someone's shoes when you have a similar background to them. A lot of leftists, it's a lot easier for us because we just analyze it based on, is something bad occurring? Okay, then we should condemn that. Is a country doing a ethnic cleansing? Oh, that's bad. But apparently Democrat operatives are incapable of doing that because they just have to completely ignore what's going on and completely obfuscate that there is a massive, massive, massive resistance to the Biden administration and the Biden campaign that may lead to the United States falling to a MAGA dictatorship in 2024 because Joe Biden just cares too much about bombing innocent civilians in the Gaza Strip. It is a complete joke, and it makes a complete mockery of the United States. We have become a joke on the international stage. We have become a joke domestically. And I think every single day, there will be more and more Americans who wake up to the injustice that is being committed because the images coming out of Rafah, coming out of Gaza, are unspeakable. They are horrific. And to just ignore these things and to pass them off like they're nothing is despicable. I don't know. I said I wouldn't go as hard on you, but I don't know. It's just hard to see how this, as someone this well educated and this like knowledgeable about politics, how you can be this on the wrong side of history.
Number 5 is people say that immigration will sink Biden. First of all, immigration isn't really a big deal to people who aren't conservatives.
I'm skipping this section because I completely agree with this analysis. I don't really think immigration is going to determine the election. I think it's great for the Republican base, like riling up all the racists and stuff, but it really just does not resonate with independents and moderates and like people who are going to be the people needed to swing the election. Like maybe it has some factors in Arizona, which is one swing state, but besides that, there's not really any other swing states that would be affected by this. So I'm just gonna skip this part and get to something more juicy.
Number 6, people will say that the rise in crime will sink Biden, but what's rise in crime? He links to an NBC article saying the US crime rate is still dropping, FBI data shows.
Bro, we already know why Republicans aren't voting for Joe Biden. I'm just gonna skip over every section that's basically just like a Republican argument against Joe Biden, because this whole thing is kind of more about if Joe Biden can recoalesce the 2020 Democratic coalition. Because the 2020 Democratic coalition was not just registered Democrats or people who always vote Democrat. It was a lot of new people. It was a lot of suburban moms. It was a lot of Arab Americans, first-time voters, young voters. A lot of Gen Z voted in that election for the first time. It was my first time voting in a presidential election. I voted for Biden during that election. My vote probably didn't matter because I'm in Kansas, but still, like, if he's not able to bring back the Democratic coalition for 2024, if even like 2% of our coalition sits out this election, we're going to lose to Donald Trump. That's just how it is. And so we should really be talking more about what his weaknesses are on the Democratic side, because he's not going to win the election by being more right-wing than Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is literally a fascist. You can't right-wing that.
So this person does provide some rock-solid advantages that Biden has heading into November. To build on top of that, somebody else in this thread said, a funding advantage, abortion as an issue, incumbency, performing better with likely voters versus Trump performing better with unlikely voters, and low expectations. People literally think Biden is a husk, so when he does okay in debates and televised events, it's a real boost for him. Somebody added on to that saying, what I've been hearing is that Biden and Dems already have a very extensive local network of political organizing and campaign management set up. Think door knocking, commercials, and the like. The Republicans have been running a much slimmer organization since they don't have the money. Even if they're catching up on funding, they're not getting that time back.
I completely agree that the Biden administration is running a way better campaign, like technically, than the Donald Trump campaign. I think the Donald Trump campaign is really going to screw over Republicans, because I think they're gonna literally just drain the RNC coffers like into his re-election campaign and basically just throw everything at the wall, which should be a little bit of alarming to Democrats, because it could be one of those elections where Donald Trump literally just sacrifices all his party's like funding just so that he can get back in the White House. And so the funding could be comparable, but currently Biden does seem to be stronger in that suit. So there is a complete chance for Biden to turn things around within the next like 4 to 6 months or whatever. But the fucking issue is if he's not changing his messaging and he's not doing any of that, then people aren't going to change sentiment on him. Just because he's speaking and not being like a dead person like at the debates and stuff isn't going to change the fact that people disagree with his foreign policy and inflation and stuff like that, and those are the people within his own party that are disagreeing with him.
Another comment on this thread, building on the idea that Biden is running a strong campaign, says, number one, his opponents. If the GOP candidate were somebody who didn't have all of Trump's baggage, they'd be up by double digits. That is probably true. If Nikki Haley were going against Joe Biden, I think Nikki Haley would have a much better chance than Donald Trump. If there are televised debates, they are also likely to demonstrate, firstly, how much more coherent and with it Biden is than the GOP caricature of him as a drooling vegetable suggests, and secondly, how much crazier Trump has gotten in the last 4 years.
I've already pointed this out that Joe Biden does have ample time to turn things around. He could totally come out into debates, come out swinging and destroy Donald Trump, especially if he focuses on abortion and stuff. And Donald Trump can't really push him on issues like Gaza because he is unironically worse on the issue somehow than Joe Biden, because he wants to give even more money and even more support to Israel, and he wants them to finish the job and whatever. He's not as vocal as Biden is, but that's mainly because he knows that it is within his best interest to just not talk about the topic, because if he talks about the topic, it will become very clear that he's worse on the issue. Literally, Jared Kushner, which is his son-in-law, was talking about like turning the Gaza Strip into beachfront property and shit, and like resorts and shit, after Israel is done like ethnically cleansing the people from the land, which is kind of insane. But yeah, for the rest of his video, he kind of just goes through comments that kind of are like, oh, but abortion could boost Biden, or he could do good in the debates, or whatever. It's basically just all speculation. It's all what ifs. Like, these things could lead to a successful successful Biden re-election campaign. If Donald Trump gets convicted and goes to jail, he gives a better chance to Biden. If Biden calls for a ceasefire, he improves his chance. If Biden is able to recoalesce a Democratic coalition, if abortion is banned in more like swing states or whatever, then that could push more voters to come out. All these things. But that doesn't guarantee that they're, one, going to vote for Biden. And that also doesn't guarantee that Biden will just win the election in general if he doesn't actually try to cater and bring his coalition back together, because right now it is fractured. And that's what every single political analyst and every single person who is not like dick riding the Biden campaign because they are just coping so hard and they don't think that genocide is actually that bad of a issue, all those people, you guys need to just open your eyes and start messaging the Biden, hey, maybe we should, actually demand a ceasefire, cut off the weapons to Israel, and actually start being a major power in enforcing humanitarian and international law, instead of literally just being pushed around by a state that is like 1/10 our size, our population, our military strength, our everything, and that is completely reliant on us for its economic and financial and international existence. Like, we have all the power in the situation. If Joe Biden wanted to, he could unironically force Israel to stop. He could threaten sanctions. He could threaten removal of subsidies. He could threaten removal of the Iron Dome. He could give the Iron Dome to fucking Palestine. Like, if anyone deserves it, it's the Palestinians. They've had more of their country bombed than, like, any Hamas rockets have done to Israel in the past, like, 60 years or whatever. Like, it's crazy. There's literally, like, 80% of housing in the Gaza Strip is just gone. And so I think it's very clear this guy does not want to talk about that issue, because it is just a major cope for a lot of these Democratic operatives. They're very scared of a Trump re-election, and they just don't know what to do about it. And they know that Biden isn't budging on the issue of Palestine or inflation or any of these things. And so they're like, fuck, if he's stuck in his way, then how do we stop this fascist from taking power? I guess we just have to gaslight and lie to the public, which historically does not turn out well and is not going to lead to people voting for you. It's just going to make people more angry, more disenfranchised, and going to lead to more people voting or just sitting out of the election. So I really just don't understand why this guy would publish this. Like I said, he does some good work with like pointing out like MAGA insanity and stuff like that, but this video is just a huge mess, and I can't believe that he made this whole video about how Biden has these like big positives, but doesn't even mention like the major issues that are hurting his campaign, the major reasons why his polling is looking so bad, and why everyone is saying he is going to lose the election to Donald Trump. So anyways, if you liked the video, like and subscribe. You should probably just donate to Palestine if you can. Remember, the link is in the description. Please do so if you're capable of doing so. If not, just get involved with some local protest or something. Like, please just do something.